I thought that we could clear up some of the issues this week in a vidcast rather than a podcast. We're going to start off today with David Gelertner. David Gelertner comes to us and asks, why is it that we execute criminals? It doesn't seem as though it's for deterrence, because if it really were for deterrence, first of all, it would be more effective. The death penalty is a terrible, terrible deterrent. It doesn't really work as a deterrent, as much as that goes contrary to common sense. Sometimes the statistics for common sense don't really play out. Common sense doesn't always make sense if you look at it. Well, it doesn't work for deterrence. Plus, if we were really trying to deter people, why wouldn't we execute publicly? And he says, is it used for vengeance? Well, if it really were about vengeance, then we would let the victim's family go ahead and execute or even decide whether to forgive or not. He says, really, America doesn't know why it executes. It doesn't have a real reason for it, and that's probably why the execution rate is so inconsistent. He says we need to make a societal proclamation that every murder is evil and that every murder requires a community response. Now, he says that it's inconsistent, and he gives one example. If we look ahead to Riemann, we can see even more examples of why the death penalty is so inconsistent. But the one thing that Gelertner focuses on is the fact that there are 1,000 murderers for every one execution. 1,000 murderers for one execution. You can't say that the death penalty is consistent at all whatsoever with such staggering statistics. If we look ahead to Gelertner, if we look ahead to Riemann, who disagrees with Gelertner, but his information is still relevant to what Gelertner is saying in this case. Riemann points out that also economics depends on whether or not you get the death penalty. He who can afford the best lawyer can escape the death penalty. Also, race plays a big factor in the death penalty. If I am a Caucasian man murdering a Caucasian man, I am much less likely to get the death penalty than a African American murdering an African American. Also, the lowest rate for executions is a Caucasian man murdering an African American, and the highest rates of murders to execution is an African American murdering a Caucasian. So, what race murders which race really plays a big role into who gets the death penalty. And note, that was what Riemann said, but it still applies to Gelertner's ideas that the death penalty is just so inconsistent. Now, what Gelertner wants us to do is to use the death penalty more consistently. He says society needs to implement the death penalty straight across the board, maybe with a few exceptions. Now, he says that speaking unambiguously for the death penalty has been made very difficult because people don't have a single distinctive moral voice anymore. We have lost our support for the death penalty, and it's because, so says Gelertner, America has lost its moral certainty. We have lost the ability to identify what is wrong as wrong because we're afraid to judge. We hear the statement, don't be judgmental. And Gelertner says, don't be judgmental. We're talking about murder. We can say that murder is evil. Murder is a wrong. And he says that we've replaced words like wrong and evil with words like disturbed and ill. The difference is, if someone is disturbed, then we can fix them. If someone is ill, we can bring them back to health. This doesn't really belong in the death penalty. We can call it wrong and evil. And it's not like people who are in favor of the death penalty are more anxious to kill than someone else. They're just much more certain about the position that they have about the evil of murder. He says America is confused about its moral ground. What we need to do is use the death penalty as a platform to show exactly how wrong murder is. The death penalty is our way of stating how evil it is to take someone's life in such a way. Executing murderers shows how evil murder is.